So in addition to Bush's innate modesty, there's also a political imperative. Bush doesn't want to call that much attention to these accomplishments because in his political universe, they are the right thing to do, they're the responsible thing to do, they are the establishment thing to do, they are the thing that Prescott Bush would do if he was in the White House. But in the new political era in which George Bush finds himself, they're actually liabilities.
You know what George Bush said yesterday to David and Rita Springs? He said, if you want to get the economy going, go buy a car or buy a house. It's a good time to buy a car. It's a good time to buy a house. It's a good time to buy a car or house because if you're on welfare and food stamps, you can't pay the light bill and be 1,000 point of light, much less buy a house or a car.
In hindsight, the recession was over by the spring of 1992. Bush's budget agreement was paying off. But so slowly, people didn't feel it.
Gross domestic product, GNP, is moving. Industrial production is up. Payroll employment is up. So things are turning around, and yet at this juncture, the American people haven't felt it. When they do, I expect to see some change.
I was watching the debate with one of my classes, and Bush, sitting looking completely disengaged, did one of these. He looked at his watch as if he was completely bored and trying to figure out when his next appointment was. I jumped up, started yelling at the screen, the election's over, the election's over. Bush, in that split second, showed himself to be a candidate who didn't want to campaign. He thought that his accomplishments would speak for themselves.
You know, if you listened to the Clinton-Gore ticket, the only way they can win is to convince America that we're in a deep recession.
A week before the election, Bush finally could announce good news on the economy.
This morning, the figures were announced for the third quarter of this growth, the gross domestic product. The third quarter was plus 2.7%. It grew twice as much.
This was the beginning of the economic boom of the 1990s, of the Clinton years.
About twice as
The good news came too late to save Bush's presidency.
Objective analysts have looked at the Clinton surpluses, the Congressional Budget Office, the Senate Budget Committee, some people at the Brookings Institution and others have said that they think that of the policy changes that accounted for the Clinton surplus, roughly 60% came in the 1990 budget agreement, thanks to President Bush.
Me to beg, okay? I'm begging. Please. Please vote for me. Please.
In the final days of the campaign, Clinton was able to turn the character issue against Bush.
Today's disclosure not only directly contradicts the president's claims, it diminishes the credibility of the presidency.
Bill Clinton won with 43% of the vote. George Bush got 37%. Ross Perot claimed 19%. It was the most decisive rejection of a sitting president since 1912.
Bill Clinton did not beat George Bush in 1992. Pat Buchanan beat George Bush in 1992. Bush let the right get away. He let the right be hijacked by Pat Buchanan. He let the right be hijacked by Newt Gingrich. He did not cater to them. He did not consider them to be as important as they had grown to be during the Reagan years. It was that lack of prescience, it was that lack of understanding the power of the political right in 1992 that cost George Bush the election.
He was bothered that his failure to be reelected in 1992 would lead historians to not only denigrate his presidency, but denigrate his commitment to the future of this country. He's not grandstanding here, not politicking, and this is what he was really concerned with.
It hurt a lot. He didn't think that the American people would turn in that direction so quickly.
It was very disappointing, to put it mildly, that he didn't win. I now think that we were saved the 4 most miserable years of our life. I think the press would have been all over him worse than ever. And I think the Congress, he never had a Congress, Senate, or House. They would have just clobbered him. Maybe Newt saved us. Maybe. Miserable 4 years.
After the loss to Bill Clinton in '92, he said, I think I'm only an asterisk between Ronald Reagan and Bill Clinton. I said to him, just give it time, Mr. President. Don't be so hard on yourself.
People make the argument that Ronald Reagan created Bush. No, that's baloney. The notion of economic prosperity, of constant economic growth, of peace abroad, all of these ideas that are associated with Reagan's legacy would have been impossible without George Bush.
His most important contribution was bringing the Cold War to an end after Reagan did all of the exciting glitzy stuff. And George Bush took us through those next few years in a way that has produced a Europe that is whole, free, and at peace.
This was one of history's major transformations, from one kind of a world to another. And rarely does that happen, except accompanied by some kind of cataclysm. It didn't. Some of it was luck. A lot of it was the careful, thoughtful, methodical work of a president who saw what he needed to do and worked his way through it. Not histrionically, not the big guy standing up on the parapet, but just got it done.
Certainly no one can see George Bush as an interregnum between the drama of the Reagan years and the roller coaster ride of Bill Clinton. There is a significant, distinct historical impact that George Bush left upon not so much the presidency, and certainly not on the political culture of his time. In many ways, he was a victim of that culture. But he left it on a much larger stage. He left it on the world stage, which is, as I suspect, the way he would want it to be.
After 4 decades of public life, George Bush feels his most important accomplishment is that his children still come home. The 41st president remains a fundamentally private man. When Ronald Reagan learned he had Alzheimer's disease, he wrote a letter for history. He addressed it to the American people. At summer's end in 2001, 9 years after his defeat, George Bush wrote a letter. He addressed it to his children.
Well, this is my last day in Kennebunkport after almost 5 months of great happiness. There's something about this place that gets into one's very soul. Don't you agree? I had a little plaque made. It says CAVU. CAVU. CAVU is the kind of weather we Navy pilots wanted when we would fly off our carrier in the Pacific. Ceiling and visibility unlimited. I will not pass by it without realizing how lucky I am. For the plaque describes my own life, as it has been over the years, as it is right now.
After leaving office, Bush saw his son George W. get elected governor of Texas, and his son Jeb, governor of Florida. When George W. was elected president in 2000, it was the first time a father and son had occupied the White House since John and John Quincy Adams almost 200 years earlier.
I used to seek broad horizons in life, and I found plenty. Now I don't care if I can't even see a gunkwit. Limited horizons are okay by me, just so family is in view. I I don't want to sit at the head table or be honored or get a medal or have stuff named for me. That's happened.
Say that I'm pleased to be here is the classic understatement of the year. This is any naval aviator's dream come true.
And I've been truly grateful. But no more need come my way. Your mother and I sit out here like a couple of really old poops, but we're at total peace. She does crossword puzzles, reads a ton of books, plays golf, and occasionally gets mildly, to use an old Navy expression, pissed off at me.
Well, I didn't say what I'm quoted as saying, that dirty dog. He tells everybody that that's the largest free fall since the 1992 election. I really didn't say that. He says it all the time. Of course I wouldn't say that. Maybe.
I can handle it, though. I fall back on bad hearing and changing the subject. Both work. Those are the 5 of you whose hugs I can still feel, whose own lives have made me so proud. I confidently tell my guardian angel that my life is Kavu, and it will be until the day I die.
American Experiences the Presidents George H.W. Bush is available on DVD.